I don't know whether they're going to pass on a lot of love right now, but anyway, here he is. We better do the intro and all those sort of things. Are we ready? 1, 2, 3, go.
It's time now for the latest news on what's hot and what's not in the world of technology with Matthew Dickerson on Tech Talk. Here on TCFM 88.9.
Morning, Matthew.
I always assume that the song you put on before I come on air is just you're thinking about me. So I just assumed you were trying to send me a lot of love, Richard. Thank you.
a lot of love in that sense. A lot of like. Right. Now, just cough for me, please. Are you all right?
Okay, good.
Apparently. This is an amazing piece of technology. An algorithm developed in the US has correctly identified people with COVID-19 only by the sound of their cough.
It is funny.
That is insane.
It is, isn't it? It is funny at the moment. As soon as you hear anyone cough or a sneeze or a sniffle, immediately everyone says, oh, you've got COVID. It's a bit of a fear factor there. But researchers work on some incredible things around the world, and we talk about lots of them on this segment. But this particular one here, I actually think it's fascinating because they've got computer algorithms set up to listen to coughs of people, and just by detecting the tone and the style of that cough, they can detect COVID with an accuracy of 98.5%.
Staggering.
Now, the actual testing that you do when you have a swab isn't that accurate. So it's quite incredible that it's that level of accuracy. The best thing about it is that you can be asymptomatic and still the cough will show that you've got COVID-19. So that is absolutely fascinating. And when people are walking into shopping malls and going into their workplace and they're getting temperature checks, that's one gauge. But obviously you could just have a common cold. You could have been out for a run this morning and you're still a bit overheated from that, and the temperature check will show that you're overheated, and then what do you do about that? But just having that cough, listening for that cough constantly, anytime, you can have it sitting there on your phone in the background, listening out for a cough, and that will detect that you've got COVID-19. So I think it's fascinating.
Do you have to? What about background noise? Does that affect the cough noise at all?
If there was too much, it would. But essentially, if you had your phone on you, near you, and there was a bit of background noise, people chatting in the background, it's looking for specific, or listening for specific frequencies, and that's the good part about it. These frequencies, a human can't even pick up on these, but by listening to it. And the way they did it, Richard, was good old-fashioned hard work from an AI. They just submitted an AI tool to tens of thousands of coughs, ones that were, ones that weren't infected with COVID-19. And AI sat there in the background and said, I've now worked out which ones are COVID-19, which ones aren't, by all that data that was fed into it. There have been some other researchers that have tried something like this, but their sample space was too low. This particular research was done with, let's say, tens of thousands of coughs, and by breaking those down into the yeses and the nos, that's when that AI could actually sit there and work it out.
Oh, look, I'm just blown away by that. 70,000 audio samples, and they've worked it out. That's sensational. All right, next one. I would not dare to put Lolita or any other strange or objectionable, in inverted commas, book title into Facebook, because that poor lady on the Gold Coast. What a dreadful story.
Yeah, so she had a Facebook page. She's got a business that relies on information or contacts coming through Facebook, and her Facebook page was blocked for not adhering to the community content. So basically, they saw that Facebook's algorithms, their AI, saw that something she was doing there wasn't appropriate. And the only thing that she could put it down to was that she'd done a search for Lolita, which is a Mexican restaurant near her. Now, Lolita has some other connotations, obviously, with a book that was written way back in about the 50s or 60s.
Oh, I mean, it was such a hot book then. Now it was nothing.
Yeah, that's right. But it certainly generated some controversy at the time. And so, for whatever reason, that search that she did, and again, we know how interlinked everything we do on our computers, on our smartphones is. So she's done a search for Lolita, wanted to go to a Mexican restaurant near her, wanted to book a table, and next thing you know, her Facebook page has been blocked. Now, the difficult part with these social media giants is it's very difficult to just pick up the phone and ring your local contact and say, hey, Jimmy, can you just fix up my page? There's not really any problem with it. So it took her about a week for her to get her page unblocked. Facebook haven't given really a lot of information. They said it wouldn't have been because it's search on Lolita, it would have been something else. But when people look at her page, there's nothing else that's offensive in any way, shape or form. So these are some of the problems we have. We just talked about a great example with the COVID cough with AI in the background. Other examples with AI they don't always get it right.
Yeah.
It took her a bit of time to get there. She's back up and running again now. That week where she didn't have access would have been a bit of a detriment to her business. But just, I suppose, you've got to be aware of everything you do on a computer or a smartphone these days might interlink with something else, and suddenly you might have your Facebook page blocked.
Well, indeed. I looked up a song title yesterday on a song we didn't have, and I got all sorts of flashings and warnings and things. I mean, the song is very playable on the air,
Yep.
but the title by itself is it's a Skyhook song, but you can probably imagine which one it was. But oh dear, oh me. It looks as though I was going to get in all sorts of trouble, have the AFP after me, I think. Now, what is Spot the robot dog doing now?
We like talking about Spot.
Yeah,
We've chatted about Spot a few times before.
We have Spot about once a month. So what's he up to now?
So he's actually been sent to Chernobyl now. So, and I suspect there is more than one Spot the robot dog, but
Yeah.
he's been sent to Chernobyl to walk around, as Spot does, inside the container. If you've ever seen the massive container, container's not the right word, but there's a massive shelter that's been built over the Chernobyl site to try and contain the radiation. And the first one they built, which was a very quick build over there, eventually the radiation deteriorated that to a point where it was starting to leak radiation. Another one was built, huge one over the top. But they want to get an idea of how the radiation is in there. Now, obviously,
how crook is it? Do we know from Spot?
well, that's the testing that's going on right
Oh,
now as we
okay.
speak. Now, obviously, they're not going to say, "Hey, Richard, can you just duck inside this huge shelter and have a bit of a walk around with a Geiger counter, please, and see how it is?" Because you're going to come out in a pretty bad way. But Spot's walking around. Spot's protected from the radiation, doing a range of tests inside there, and essentially coming back with some pretty comprehensive information about how the radiation is, what levels there are in there, where the radiation is inside there, because at some stage in the future, and I'm talking down the track, 50, 60 years down the track, they'll probably have to rebuild another shelter over the existing shelter again, keep building it out, because the half-life of some of those radiation elements there is going to be thousands of years. So that'll be an area for a long time. But there was a very basic robot used back in about 1979 when the 3 Mile Island catastrophe or partial meltdown happened. There was a robot sent in to do some work there. So Spot's not the first robot to go into a radiation zone, but probably the most sophisticated robot to go into a radiation zone.
Well done, Spot. Okay. Now, I know that you are very, very keen on electric vehicles, so we've got to talk about Ford and BMW today. I don't know why Mercedes-Benz is not mentioned, but anyway, I'll leave that up to you. What's happening at Ford?
Well, there's a new CEO of Ford, and in the first investor call that he had with investors to decide whether they want to invest in Ford in the long term, he said that the future of Ford is definitely EV, definitely electric, but he's taking a slightly different tack to a lot of other manufacturers. He says that the future for Ford is the $20,000, and this is US $20,000, the $20,000 car, not the cars in the $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 target, where companies like Mercedes-Benz, like Tesla, like some of the other manufacturers, they're bringing in their first models, if you like, their introductory EV models are all in that very much the higher price range, but he sees a target at $20,000. He also sees that 10% of Ford's revenue in the near future. Now, I don't know what near future means, Richard. I don't know whether it's 6 months, 12 months, 5 years, 10 years.
Polly speak.
It does sound like that, doesn't it? So in the near future, 10% of all revenue generated by Ford is going to be around EVs. Now, they've already got the Mustang, so there's a Mach-E Mustang that's already been announced. I think you can actually buy it in America already. So for a muscle car, having that as EV, I think is a great step by them. But the other one that comes out in 2022 is the Ford F-150 EV version. So you can imagine all these people in America with their big...
The boys.
That's right, the big F-150s, they love that sound of an F-150, the huge engines they used to have in those, or they still do now, roaring around, and putting those as an EV is a bit of a risk by Ford because it doesn't sound like their target market, but they believe there's enough attraction in EV with the incredible torque that's available to them, how quiet they are obviously is an attraction. It might not be for some of those drivers, but certainly there's a attraction there. So they've got their future that they're starting already, and BMW next week, we might have to talk about it a bit more next week, they've got their first fully EV vehicle called an iNext. Now, they did show this at a show a couple of years ago, and there was a prototype then, but now, as of next week, it'll actually be available for sale. I'm not sure if they're going to get in trouble from Apple, because you stick an I in front of anything, Apple likes to know about it.
Yeah.
So they've called this the iNext, but that's kind of the name they've used for their marketing so far. Maybe it'll be a different name when they officially launch it. Maybe Tim Cook made a quick phone call to BMW and said, hey guys, can you back off on that? But as with anything German, the technology in this is going to be fantastic. The technology in the cab will be trying to rival Tesla in terms of that technology. They'll be doing over-the-air updates like Tesla does. So they'll be really embracing all the background and all the knowledge that BMW have had over the years with the modern technology of an EV. So I'm looking forward to it. That'll be an SUV style car.
Yeah, well, Mercedes have got the same thing, SUV. It's on the road already.
Yeah.
So yeah, BMW and Merck fighting it out in Germany and fighting it out in world markets, I imagine.
Yeah.
And also we've got Ford in the play. Interesting with Ford, though. I mean, Henry Ford started the production line and got the T model going. I wonder if this CEO has the same thought.
Well,
of doing a cheap, all-purpose electric vehicle.
it was interesting one time when Tesla was very excited about how many cars they produced for the month, and I can't remember the number, but let's say it was 50,000. So Elon Musk has come out and said, wow, we've had a great month this month, we've produced 50,000 cars. And Ford CEO, not this particular one, but the previous Ford CEO had a bit of a laugh about that and sent out a tweet and said, 50,000 a month, we do that in a few hours.
Yeah.
So the production volume of someone like Ford is quite incredible. If they can start to get EV production and then apply their knowledge of manufacturing, those 100-odd years of manufacturing that Ford have got, then we will start to see that $20,000 EV.
For sure. Always good talking with you, Matt. Now, we've got a break for a couple of weeks, and so you'll be back in 3 weeks' time.
Sure.
Okay, we'll see you then. I'm going on holidays, folks. This is my last week for a couple of weeks off. It's 25 to 10, DCFM 88.9, Matthew Dickinson and Tech Talk, Wednesday mornings when we return.